Audio.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I will be your host for today. Really excited to be taking today's virtual field trip out into the Pacific Ocean. We're going to be joined today by Ken Costell from the Woods Hole Ocean Institute. He's on board the research vessel Atlantis, part of an expedition studying the processes that govern the formation and evolution of oceanic crust, as well as training young scientists how to plan and carry out a complex research cruise with both human-occupied submersibles, in this case Alvin, and the autonomous underwater vehicle Sentry. So right now they're about 1,500 miles south of San Diego in the Pacific Ocean. Ken, it's so great to have you joining us live today. I'm so jealous of your ocean view.
I'll show it to you in a second. Right now we're on the bridge of the research vessel Atlantis. We finished up the expedition yesterday, so we're starting to head north to San Diego. I'm going to turn the camera around so that you can see where we're at. There's the view from the bridge. That's Amy, the second mate, who's on duty, and Jim, one of the able-bodied seamen, who is standing watch with her. It's always an officer and an AB, as they say. There's 3 officers, 3 ABs. They stand watch in shifts of 2 hours each during the day, and then 6 hours each in the late hours in the evening. So they're driving. We're on sort of an autopilot kind of system. It's just aiming us towards a point way north, just off the coast of San Diego, where we'll pick up a pilot to take us into the harbor. I'm going to leave them and start walking you guys through the ship. Back here is where they control the sub.
Ken, I'm just going to pop in for just a sec. Can I ask you just to speak up just a little bit more?
Sure.
Perfect.
Okay, how's this? I've got a headset on and I'm talking right into the mic. All right, well, the sub's not in the water, but they're doing some system checks and some work there. But when the sub's in the water, there's somebody always there monitoring its position and talking to the pilot of the sub. I'm going to take you down a deck. I'm going to show you where I stay when I'm on the ship. This is my cabin. It's pretty small. I'm up on the top bunk. It's small, but we don't spend a lot of time in our cabins when we're on the ship. We're usually down in the main lab. Some things you might notice that are different from your room. We have life jackets right here and immersion suits. If we have to get into cold water, we put the immersion suits on and we'll be warm and dry until somebody comes to pick us up. Also for safety, I usually sleep with a change of clothes right there, some long pants and a hat in case I have to jump out real quickly. We share a bathroom with the folks next to us. Keep our door, we're supposed to keep our door locked open when we're not here, so that if something happens, the crew who's coming through to check to make sure where everyone is, they know that this is an empty room. They don't have to check every place. Take you down another 2 levels. There's a poster on the ship of the sub Atlantis, or the sub Alvin. We're going to see that in a little bit. The sub is, well, it's 50 years old, but it's changed over time, and it's a completely different sub now. So this is what it was 50 years ago, and this is what it is today. And really soon, it's going to go through another final phase of an upgrade so that it can go even deeper than it goes now. Right now it goes to 4,500 meters. Soon it's going to go to 6,500. I'll let you guys work out how far that is in miles. And relax when we're off duty. Probably we have 45 minutes for meals. They feed us very well. The crew is on break right now, so I'm not going to bother them. We have breakfast leftovers. This is a lounge where everybody comes to watch movies or relax and read. And then there's also a library, a meeting room. You can also come and relax, and the crew has they can check their email there. Joe, I just want to check that you guys can still hear me. I don't hear anything in my earpiece.
Yeah, no, we're still good. I just have the classroom microphones on mute. And I think you just switched between a node. So the camera froze for a moment, but it seems to be coming back.
The ship runs from the stern all the way to the bow. We're walking forward right now. The research ship, we have 2 cold rooms. These are kept at 2 degrees Celsius, which is the temperature of seawater in the deep ocean. And these are some tube worms that they collected yesterday. Okay. There's Carolyn, who studies crabs and other organisms. She's running an experiment on how crabs at hydrothermal vents are able to withstand both the hot temperatures around vents and the cold temperatures nearby.
So boys and girls, as Ken walks through the ship, sometimes there's dead zones between the different internet routers. So sometimes it's going to take a moment for him to pop back to us as he walks through the ship. So he should be back once he gets to a good connection point. Potentially, he may have stopped right in a dead zone, which is why we can't hear him. So he might be telling us something, not realizing that he's in between 2 routers right now. So we'll just give him a moment to come back in. In fact, it looks like he dropped out for a second. So we'll give him a second to pop back in and join us. But as you can probably tell, it's not easy to connect from a ship that's 1,500 miles off the coast of California. Oh, hey, Ken. We lost you for a sec.
Hey. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna try getting a little bit of show and tell.
Sure.
That means that means I'm going to have to unplug, and Dan's going to speak up into the side of the phone so you guys can hear.
Great.
All right, let's see if this works. All right, can you still hear us?
Hi. Hi,
Yeah,
everyone.
we hear ya.
Joe,
We can hear you, Ken.
Can you hear us?
Yep.
Okay. All right, everyone, this is Dan Furnari. He's a geologist at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and he's been studying this part of the seafloor where we were for quite a while. So I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about the map that we have in front of us and some of the rocks.
Hi, everyone. Glad that you're tuning in to our research cruise. So as Ken said, I've been studying the East Pacific Rise, the mid-ocean ridge here in the Eastern Pacific for about the last 30 years. And there have been some exciting developments, not the least of which is the data that we've collected on this last cruise. So we were just yesterday finishing processing some of the map-based data that we got with the autonomous vehicle Sentry, the robot that is pre-programmed to go down and do very specific mapping for us on the bottom of the ocean. And what it came back with was a terrific map of side-scan sonar. And this is this map here that Ken is showing you. It's basically sort of an aerial view. If you go with your folks on an airplane and look out the window, and maybe you're flying across the western United States, and you see all this terrific topography and the valleys and the riverbeds and the canyons and whatnot. Well, that's sort of the same that we're doing with this side-scan sonar. So this sort of creates a texture map of the bottom of the ocean. And this feature right here is the plate boundary. So that's where the mid-ocean ridge is spreading. This is the Pacific plate on this side going to the northwest, and on this side there's the Cocos plate going to the east. And it's what's going underneath Central America, causing all those earthquakes and volcanoes in Central America. So the plate is separating here, and this fissure right here is where the volcanism happens and where the lavas came out. And in fact, these lavas here that you see, these dark areas, are the lava flows that came out in 2005, 2006, about 12, 13 years ago. And that's one of the things that we've been studying, as well as the hydrothermal vents that are associated with the volcanism and the magmatism that happens here. When the hot lava interacts with seawater, it creates hot hydrothermal vents, and those vents have minerals in them, and they create these tall chimneys that have the billowing hot smoke that are basically the source of the nutrients for the bacteria and the life forms that are here at the mid-ocean ridge. And in fact, I
showed them some tube worm casings just before we got cut off.
Cool. Well, you can probably see the glittering of this. This is a sample collected yesterday from one of the vent systems here called P-Vent, which we've been studying for over 25 years. And this is glittery stuff here is chalcopyrite. Some of you who are rock hounds and mineral fans may know it as chalcopyrite. And this is one of the dominant minerals. It's an iron copper mineral that is formed at these hydrothermal vents. And this big rock over here is a piece of the basaltic lava that is what is forming these new eruptions that you saw on the map just now. And all of this dark, shiny glass on top is the very quickly chilled melt that comes out. And because the seawater is very cold at the bottom of the ocean, about 2 degrees, and the lava that comes out is at about 1100 degrees, it chills instantly and forms this kind of rock, which is called basaltic lava.
And so this is basically new seafloor that's going to eventually move with the plate and be more of the crust later in the middle of the plate someday.
That's right. It gets buried underneath sediments, and eventually, in a couple of 100 million years, will be subducted underneath an island arc or a trench system out in the very far western Pacific.
And this is pretty common out here because most of the volcanic activity on Earth, in fact, happens around here, right?
Yes, dominantly. I mean, because the oceans cover 2/3 of the planet, and the oceanic crust is formed by this kind of basaltic lava. That's really the dominant rock form that we have on Earth, and And it's the kind of lava that you would see, for instance, if you go out to Hawaii on vacation and see the eruptions at Kilauea or Mauna Loa. Those rocks are also basaltic lava with very similar types of forms to what we see on the bottom of the ocean.
Can we go take a look at the map?
Yeah, sure.
We have a 3D map that you guys can see a little bit better what we're talking about when we talk about the mid-ocean ridge. So this is the main lab. You saw the smaller lab earlier. This is the lab where most of the people are working and running experiments and, you know, sort of working during the day. Dan's just pulling up a 3D map that they made from some of the other data that we got off of the autonomous underwater vehicle Sentry, so you can see what's on the seafloor.
Yeah, so this is a bathymetry map, and it's a bathymetry map made by the autonomous robot Sentry. And because we are imaging very close to the bottom, about 65 meters above the bottom, and because of the frequency of the sonar that we're using, which is about at 200 kilohertz, this map has incredible resolution, down to a meter or sub-meter accuracy. So here you're seeing the map that we made initially when we came here. We've since expanded this and made a much bigger map, but I'm just showing you some of the details of this. And we're visualizing this with a computer software program called Mouse, made by QPS. And it is great because it allows you to sort of look at different features and sort of zoom in on things. And we can, in this way, really see carefully the topography that we're looking at, and we can plan our dives accordingly. And it's at such a resolution that we can zoom in on this and we can really see in detail all of the volcanic features, the lava pillars, the hydrothermal vents, and the primary fissure where the lava came out of, and the lava channels that were created by the eruption. And so it's giving us a whole new perspective on how this terrain formed, and we can start to relate really for the first time, the specific biological features and geochemical properties of the fluids coming out of the hydrothermal vents to the rocks that are being formed.
Yeah, how fast are the plates moving here?
They're moving at about 11 centimeters. So when a centimeter is about 2.5 inches, right? So it's about 4 or 5 inches per year. That's the total spreading rate, half to one side and half to the other side.
And how often do volcanic eruptions occur here?
Well, that's an interesting question, Ken, because our work here for over the last 2 or 3 decades has demonstrated that, in fact, we've been able to witness 2 eruptions at this site, and one in 1991, 1992, and the other one in 2005, 2006. And if you just do the sort of back of the envelope calculation of a 1-meter dike being intruded into this crust and how fast it's spreading, we would predict that there would be an eruption every 15 years or so, 15 to 20 years. And in fact, that timing between 1991, 92 and 2005, 2006, and when we expect the next one to happen, which we think will be in the next 4 or 5 years, has been pretty much spot on.
Okay. I'm going to want to take them back to the aft and then have time for questions. So
Great.
I'm going to leave you for now.
Okay, well, thanks so much for tuning in, and it's a pleasure. And any of you who are in San Diego, California, we'll look forward to seeing you on December 22nd when we're there.
Great.
All right, that was awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Okay, we're back on headphone now. Let's see. Rika is just finishing filtering some viruses out of the water. Matt's analyzing some more rocks. I'm going to take you outside, so it's going to be a little windy. It's and a little noisy. One of the things you got to point out, difference between this ship and maybe some other cruise ships people might have been on, is when there's activity going on outside, we have to wear work vests that are life preservers and hard hats. Some people decorate theirs. Sticker from Namibia. Okay, here we go. try and shield you guys from some of the noise. This is a CTV rosette. This is something we use to collect water from really down deep, sometimes as far as 4 miles down. This trip we were only about 3 kilometers, about 1.5 to 2 miles down. We were able to capture some water that from those vents that was flowing out. We were able to get a lot of it. Collect some without and carry a little bit up at a time. This is a small boat. If you saw some of the videos that I posted online earlier the week, you recognize the boat as something where they send swimmers out to help with the launch and recovery. Okay, this is the autonomous underwater vehicle Sentry. It's completely programmable. Nobody rides inside of it. And then this swims down and it carries sonar or cameras or other kinds of sensors that can measure the water or that can measure the seafloor. And in the case of the seafloor, they can make those maps that we saw earlier with Dan. It can go as deep as 6 kilometers, which is about 2.5 miles. Doing that really quickly. Times 0.6. Yeah, 6. Well, 3.5. 3.5 miles down. It's been around for about, I want to say, 15 years now, and it keeps changing in some ways, but all in the inside. People keep putting more and more different sensors on it. And then some of the guys like to dress it up depending on the season. This year it got a Grinch on the front. There's Manu. He's the one who made the Grinch face. So the way things usually work, not always, is that Sentry goes down at night, and then when it comes back up, they download a lot of the data. They make a really quick, high-resolution map that then they give to the people who are going down into Alvin, and then they can look at that map and revise their dive plans. This is Alvin. So this is a 3-person sub. 3 people ride in it for about 8 hours. They go in just after breakfast. They come back just before dinner. And that's not because of meal times. They don't want to miss a meal. It's because they have limited battery power. This is completely untethered. We put it in the water, and it goes off by itself. Now you can see it stretches way back there, but the people only ride up here in this. That's a 6-foot diameter titanium sphere. You get in from up there, but of course this is underwater when it's in there, so they just climb in. Well, they climb in up there on that ladder to the left there, and then the whole thing gets connected to the A-frame, the big crane, and then they lift it over the edge. So they get inside, get put over the side, and then the team goes through a bunch of safety checks and then clear the sub to dive, and it goes down. And around here, it takes about an hour to reach the seafloor, and they just sink under their own weight. And then once they get about 300 feet from the seafloor, they drop some weights and they become neutrally buoyant, which means they're not heavy and they're not light. They just stay in one place. And then they drive the sub down on its own power. And then they go around, they pick up things with these manipulators. Usually this basket in the front is full of sample boxes and containers and other instruments to put out. They go about doing all their work, and they might have lunch. Usually they're so busy that they don't eat. And then when it's time to come back up, they drop another set of weights, and they become positively buoyant, which means they're afloat. And so then they rise up on their own, under their own buoyancy, until they get to the surface, and then we go through a whole recovery process to get them back on deck. And that's about it. I can take questions at any time now.
All right. Thanks, Ken. That was an awesome tour of the ship. Thanks so much for taking us to the lab, and thanks so much for showing us the vehicles. It looks like you've had a great expedition.
Yeah. They're doing a lot of maintenance right now, so it might be a little noisy occasionally.
All right, let's give it a go. Let's start meeting some of our live classrooms. So let's see. Let's start off. Let's go to Mrs. Custer's class. There's grade 5s. They're joining us from Little Rock in Arkansas. Let me turn their microphone on. How are we doing, grade 5s? Good. All right, who's got a question for Ken?
What's the coolest creature that you see?
I can't hear you.
Can you come a little closer for me, bud? I missed that.
What's the coolest creature that you've ever seen when you're in the submersible vehicle?
Oh, okay. So I have never been in the sub. I'm always the sort of last on the list because I'm not a scientist. But I get to see. I was worms thing because they've evolved to live because they have a special bacteria inside of them, and that bacteria can eat the chemicals in the water that's coming up from the seafloor, and then the bacteria produce sugars and other things that the tube worm can eat. That's called symbiosis. They share a relationship that's helpful for both of them, and these things grow in like groves. They're like fields of flowers on the seafloor. I think they're pretty cool.
All right, tube worms, very cool. Let's see. Let's go to Mrs. Babcock's class. Some grade 4s from Hutchinson, Kansas, joining us. Let me turn their microphone on. How are we doing, Kansas?
Great.
All right, who's got the question?
We have somebody from Kansas out here.
What?
We have somebody from Kansas out here. I'm from Kansas State. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Tell them hello.
What's your question?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, here we go.
My name is Addie, and how long do you guys stay in the boat?
Oh,
How long
okay, well, we are out here for 3 weeks, which is about average. But this ship can stay out at sea for about 2 months. And I think the longest I've been out is about 40 days or so. And after about 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, we start to lose our fresh vegetables, usually lettuce first. And then we start to lose some of the fresh fruit. We get a lot more apples. It only gets really bad if the ship starts to run out of coffee.
All right, excellent. Let's see, Mrs. Bryce's class, grade 8's joining us in San Marcos. Let me turn their microphone on. There they are. Hey, Ms.
We're going to see a lot of you guys. We're going to see a lot of you guys when we get to San Diego.
How did you guys find out about these vents, and why did you guys start researching them?
Wow. Okay. Here we go. This is a little bit of a science history lesson. So for a long time, scientists couldn't figure out where some of the heat from inside the Earth was going. They can measure heat just like anything else. And from all the calculations they were doing, there was the heat from the seafloor wasn't matching what they were estimating should be coming from the seafloor. So they were looking at this one particular spot back in 1976, I think. And they were out on a ship like this, and they were towing a camera behind the ship. And all of a sudden, they saw all these dead mussel shells. And there were a bunch of geologists, so they didn't know what it was. They just said, wait a minute, those shouldn't be there. Or maybe it was just a ship passing by and they had, seafood, shellfish for dinner, and they dumped the old shells off in the middle of the ocean. But somebody else, saw that and thought he knew what it might be. There might be something else going on. So he came back with a sub, and they went down there and they were looking around, and they found hot water coming up from the ocean, from the seafloor. And then they found animals growing there that shouldn't exist there because there's no light. There's no way to sustain these these big animals that need to feed on other things and need to have a food chain. So they picked some of them up, and it was a bunch of geologists, so they called a biologist back on shore, and they said, we don't know what to do with this thing. This huge tube with a worm inside of it. So they called it tube worm. And the biologist said, oh my gosh, you just got to preserve it in whatever you can. And then the next year he came out with an earlier version of Alvin, the sub. And that's when we discovered just how big some of these vents, they're called hydrothermal vents, hydro wall.
All right, it looks like we may have lost our signal for a moment, so let's give Ken a minute and see if he drops out and pops back in again.
All these other things. Now we avoid common business for us, the ocean. They love it. So that started.
Hey, Ken, we lost you for a sec. Can you still hear us?
I can hear you now.
All right, perfect. Let's go and visit. Let's see. Mrs. Orja's group is joining us in Orangeville, Ontario, so here in Canada, with her students. I'm just going to need a little favor, Mrs. Orja. Your microphone won't turn on from here. You're able to turn it on your end for me so you can ask a question?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. So, everybody say hi. Go ahead, Addie.
Hey, everyone.
My name's Addie. Have you found any treasure in the waters?
Well, we think everything we bring up is a treasure because it's really rare. But we have not found. Oh, here's the treasure. So that mineral, that shiny mineral that Dan was showing you earlier, that's called pyrite. And that's also called fool's gold because when it was first discovered, people thought it was gold, but it's not. It's just gold and shiny, but it's a completely different thing. But no treasure, no shipwrecks on this one.
It's more, I think, that the scientific data is the treasure and the samples.
I know, but that's not the same thing.
All right, fair enough. Let's see. Let's go now to Mrs. Cope's class. They are joining us from Cinnamonston. They are a grade 6 class. Let me turn their microphone on. How are we doing, grade 6s?
Wait, I didn't hear where you guys are from.
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Ooh, where?
New Jersey.
My name's Logan, and I would like to know what's the biggest difference you've seen between mountain ranges on land and mountain ranges in the water?
I mean, there's all sorts of mountain ranges in the water. You know, so they're as different as they are on land, and probably some of them actually in the water would be even more spectacular than the ones that you see on land. So, for example, the tallest mountain on Earth, you might say Mount Everest, but in fact, it's the Mauna Kea volcano in Hawaii, which is much, much taller than Mount Everest if you measure from the seafloor where it starts to the very top. So I'll let you guys look that up and see how tall it really is.
All right, let's visit Mrs. Heron's class this time. They're joining us from, oh, there they are, from McPherson, Kansas in the US. So some grade 4-5 students. Let me turn their microphone on. How we doing, boys and girls?
All right, lots of Midwesterners who are interested in the ocean. I love it.
My name's Tylee, and do you guys consider you guys as explorers?
Wow, I like that question. I think we are. I mean, the place where we went is pretty well studied. You know, people have been there, I don't know, maybe a dozen times or so. But every time you go there, it's different, and there's something new. And you know, we brought some animals up from the seafloor, and I was in the lab when the biologist looked at it, and they said, I don't know what that is. So I think that's exploration, when you come across something that you don't know, and you got to figure out what it is. So yes, I think so.
And Ken, would it be accurate to say that you'll go out there with, say, 100 questions and then come back with even more?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, excellent. That's good science.
Yep.
All right, well, let's visit some classrooms for some follow-ups. I know a few classrooms periods have ended, so they've had to pop up, but we still have classrooms with us. So let's visit Mrs. Custer's class and see if they have a follow-up.
Yeah. My name's Caroline, and how many times a week do you go to the ocean floor?
They'll go every day because it's really hard to get here. And so when you're here, don't waste any time. Unless there's a mechanical problem or we have weather, they're going to put the sub in the water. And this year, I just found out yesterday, the submarine has done every dive that it was scheduled to do. I think, which is something like over 100 dives a year. Next year it's fewer because it goes in for a maintenance period with the ship at the same time. But you know, if the sub is out here and conditions are right, it will go in the water.
All right, awesome question. Let's jump back to Mrs. Babcock's class. Your microphone is on.
Do you always go down in the sub?
Do I what?
Do you always go down the sub, or do you sometimes wear equipment?
I'm sorry, the audio keeps cutting out.
Do you always go down in the submersible, or do you sometimes put equipment on and go down as bodies?
Oh, I see. So it's both. There's always 3 people in it, and there's always equipment in it or on it. There are, you know, there's the time. It's so expensive to bring the sub out here, and time in the sub is so valuable to the scientists that they always have an observer there or 2 observers, they're called, who are in charge of collecting samples and doing experiments. Sometimes it's not their own experiments, it's other people's stuff. So they have to be in charge of managing that whole dive and making sure everything happens. But no, if it goes in, and it'll be loaded to carry as much stuff as it possibly can.
All right. Ken, I think part of that question too was, do people ever go in as divers, but it's way too deep for divers? So.
Oh yeah. Okay. So we use the word diver to mean people inside the sub. So like I pointed out, that sphere is titanium 3 inches thick. It has to be that to be really, really strong to withstand the pressure in the deep ocean.
All right, let's jump to Mrs. Bryce's class. Your microphone's on if you have a follow-up.
Okay, my question is, have there ever been complications when you're in the submarine?
They have had problems, nothing serious. You know, sometimes they'll just have an electrical problem. But the pilots are the people who do the maintenance and who do all the upgrades and who are, you know, working on it all the time. So they know the sub inside and out. You'll meet some of them when you come here next week. But, you know, they can do everything from work on the mechanical parts of the sub to the electronics to build new things to put on it, to do different experiments. You know, back in the 60s, I think, very, very early on, the sub did sink once, but there was nobody in it. A wave came and washed over it, flooded the personnel sphere, and it sank, but it was recovered later. I think like a year later, the Navy came out and recovered it.
All right, let's visit Mrs. Cope's class one more time. Your microphone is on.
It is on. I like our microphones. Can you hear us?
Yep, we gotcha.
If these plates, if these plates keep moving apart, then will America start colliding with other countries and continents? Like,
it might, yeah. I think what is it? The Atlantic Ocean is opening and the Pacific is closing. Joe, do you remember?
Yeah, that sounds right. There's definitely.
You'll see, you know, this has happened over hundreds of millions of years. The continents have been moving in different. They've been in different places and had different shapes than what we know today. And hundreds of millions of years from now, they'll be in completely different places. So you could find, you know, what online what will be colliding with what, or what will change and what won't. You know, like India is colliding with the southern part of Asia, and it's creating the Himalaya mountains. So you know that will keep going. The Atlantic Ocean is opening and spreading along the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, things like that.
All right, and we'll take a final question from Mrs. Heron's class. We'll give you a follow-up.
Okay, so how do you know what your main priority is?
We have lots of meetings, and we talk about it, and make lists, and then change the lists and go over and over. But eventually, everybody comes to agreement and says, "Okay, this is what we're going to do. If we're going to collect these samples, you know, like in this order, we have to decide what order everything is going to be in as well, because sometimes the sub will go down with things that have to be put on the seafloor and left there, but then that will clear space for samples to be put on. But everybody pretty much eventually agrees on a specific set of priorities, and then we measure what we think of as success based on those. And right now, we're all saying that this was a successful trip because we got almost everything we wanted.
Excellent. And Ken, maybe just one more kind of touch on that. How long in advance are you planning for this expedition? How long does it take?
Wow. So the first, we did this in two halves. There was a makeup cruise because in 2016 some folks were out here and they had to cut the cruise short. So this was makeup dives, 4 dives for them, and then another set of dives for some young scientists who are just training how to organize an expedition like this and set priorities and things like you mentioned. And we started our meetings for that at the beginning of the year. But you know, certainly planning for the whole thing began way before that.
All right. Well, first of all, boys and girls, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. It was so cool to be able to travel out 1,500 miles off San Diego and have that tour of the ship. So your questions, as always, classrooms, were phenomenal. Ken, I can't thank you enough. That both hangouts we've done have been great. Today's that was an awesome tour. There's such good science going on the ship, so thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Oh, I think I lost you guys.
Oh, Ken, can you still hear me?
Yes, now I can.
Okay, I was just saying thank you so much. Both of our hangouts have been awesome. That was a ton of fun to tour today. You guys are doing some awesome science.
Thank you guys for organizing it, for organizing this, Joe, and everybody for joining us. This was a lot of fun.
All right, well, last thing we'll do is I'll turn the microphones on. So boys and girls, nice and loud so they can hear you all over the ship. Goodbye and thank you to Ken. Here we go. All right, excellent work, boys and girls. Thank you so much for the great questions. Teachers, if you took some pictures, please post them online. Tag Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants on Twitter. Tag Ocean Institute, WHOI, Louis. Thank you so much, Ken, and we look forward to hopefully doing more in the future. All right, signing off. Thanks, everyone.